Hello, you're listening to episode 8. Ooh, 8 of 8-Minute Movies, Alienated. I said 8 too many times. A podcast talking about the 1979 movie 8, Alien, in 8-minute chunks, presented by me, 8, and him, 8. How are you doing, 8?
I'm doing all right. I have got a new television. Is what's happening in my life at the moment.
Wow. Nobody... Has anyone really say the word television? Like, or you just say TV, don't you, really?
I feel like...
Do you say television?
I feel like you can say the word television without immediately turning into a Victorian gentleman.
I don't know. At this point, it sort of feels like, gramophone or wireless. Have you placed your television next to your Victrola?
Listen, I bought myself a new televisual device.
A new televisual media platform.
Yes. And it's, well, the thing is, my old one was having this problem where it was starting to get a bit...
Ding.
We haven't got to that bit yet.
No, but you did it last week, so fuck you.
Didn't do it this early during the "How are you" phase.
during the casual greeting.
I used to have a 40-inch TV, and I was pretty happy with that as a television size. It's large but not ludicrous, and I liked it. It suited how close I am to the TV when I'm sat down. But now you can't. Well, you can, but there's not many options for 40-inch TVs. 43 is the standard in that kind of range now. So they're just literally inching up the sizes over the years, I guess. So I'm hoping that I don't need to replace my TV too many times, because eventually it's just going to take up an entire wall, and that'll be the only option, because you never want to go down in size. You know what I mean? It feels weird to go reduce in size after you've had a television of a certain size.
Yeah, it's one of them things that can only ever really go up, isn't it?
Yeah. But so yeah, I wanted it to stay the same, and I think, like you, I would imagine, I wanted a simple television experience. Really, I don't care about all of the apps on the television. I plug it into my PC. I have everything that I could possibly need on that. I do not need apps and stuff on it. But you can't just get a monitor that is that sort of size. Once things get to that sort of size range, everything magically turns into a smart TV, which used to mean that maybe it's got a Netflix app on it. That's what it meant last time I got a TV. Now it means that it's probably smarter than me. It's kind of... I had to scan in a QR code at some point when I was setting this up. It was harder to set up than my PC.
Wow.
It was a bit of a nightmare, and for loads of different reasons as well. Things that you don't necessarily think about when getting a new TV. Like, I thought that my little unit that I sit the TV on would be big enough for any reasonable size TV. No, this one is slightly too large. The feet go off the edge. So now I have it balanced on 2 planks of wood that I happen to have that are sitting on top of my my little TV table.
Oh dear.
And also just other things like, well, all of the HDMI ports are on the wrong side compared to where all of my devices are. So some of the HDMI cables don't reach.
You can't really blame them for that one, though.
No, but it's supposed to be a smart TV. Could have anticipated this. And like, there's one less HDMI port as well, which annoys me. That 4 used to be a good number. Now it's almost impossible to get one with 4 HDMI ports, so it's got 3, and it's quite common to have ones that only have 2, which seems like a really weird decision to me, because people have more devices now, not fewer.
Yeah, so I did the same thing you did, like a casual look around for a TV a while back, because my TV is 11 years old, and I love it. There's nothing wrong with it at all. It's great TV. You're listening to me over there, right? Yeah, it's listening to me. Good. And it has 4 HDMI ports on it, and I was like, well, modern TVs will have that, but no, it's a 40-inch TV, and I was like, I just want another 40-inch TV, and no 40-inch TVs have 4 HDMI ports anymore, and I'm like, why? I reckon that HDMI ports cost nothing.
Yeah, so I didn't even really want a 4K TV. I was going to be perfectly happy with a 1080 TV, but when I looked at the options, all of the 1080p TV seems to be shit. And one of the things that was shit about them is that most of them had only 2 HDMI ports, and even like Sony's big kind of. It's not really their flagship product because it's a 1080p, and obviously they are pushing the 4K stuff. But their kind of best 1080p TV, 2 HDMI ports, which is basically a deal breaker for me.
Yeah, I mean, you can buy a little widget that plugs into it, and then you plug extra HDMI things into that, and that does the switching. But that's bollocks. I mean,
no, I don't want to have to do that. It would
it's stupid. It really is stupid.
It would annoy me from the very beginning. But 3 is just about the minimum that I can get away with without just getting really pissed off about having to change stuff around all the time. So it's been a bit more stressful setting up this television than I'd initially anticipated. But hey, I can watch things at a really high resolution now if I want to, and maybe I will be able to notice the difference. Who can say?
Perhaps one day we'll watch Alien in 4K on it, or even 8K.
No, it doesn't have 8K. I did not go that far, but yeah, it's got HDR, whatever that is. It has QLEDs, and the Q stands for quantum.
Shit.
I can watch films from another dimension on this.
Is your TV capable of traveling in time? Is this what you're telling?
It can view media from all possible worlds.
It's very bad to watch things on it because you're collapsing the waveform as you're doing so.
Yes. It's a way fancier TV than I had been intending to go for, but it was the one that ticked all my kind of must-have boxes in, and so that's what I went for. And I figured, okay, I don't get a TV very often. If this one can last me basically forever, which it won't, but if it can at least last me a long time, then I guess I can justify spending a bit more. But everything about it annoys me. The fact that I need to log into it in order to even start using it.
Dude, don't get me started on machines that ask you to sign into them when you don't need to. Like I bought a new router during the recent COVID unpleasantness, because I have about 200,000 devices using Wi-Fi, and the one that my internet company had provided to me was dying under the strain of all these packets flying around. So I bought it's like a gaming router. You can tell it's a gaming router because it's all black and red, and it's got like fangs and shit. But it's like 800 little Wi-Fi antennas, which I'm tempted to dismantle because I reckon there's actual antennas in like 2 of them, and the rest are just there to look like sleek fins. It definitely looks like it's been stealthed, so you can't pick it up on radar. But also, when I tried to set it up at first, it was like, now you need to sign into your Netgear account, and I'm like, why exactly? I mean, like, please explain to me why. And well, the reason it was because you couldn't continue the installation process if you didn't sign in. So I was like, well, fuck you, I guess. Okay, fine. Now Netgear occasionally email me about my router. They're like, still working? I'm like, yep. Still doing whatever it is routers do, moving like tiny I don't know what routers do. Let's move on.
But it makes me feel old. It makes me feel like I'm just aging into dust as I set this thing up, because I just want a screen I can plug stuff into. That's all I want. Please just let me have that.
Yeah. I had the exact same situation. I don't want a smart TV. Like, I don't want it doing all this weird shit behind my back. Does that sound paranoid? Like, I've got a computer. The computer does all the stuff I want. I plug the computer in. Really, what I want is a large monitor.
Yeah, I don't even mind it too much from like because I know there's just something weird about all of these devices in your home, like collecting data and things like that on you. There is something unsettling about that, but I don't even mind it that much from that sort of perspective. I just don't need it, and I feel like I'm paying for it when I buy these things, and I'm not going to use it. So that's what annoys me about it.
There's a thing though, like a lot of technology stuff now sort of feels like it's a compromise. Like you can never find the thing which is exactly the thing you want. There's always something you got to take a hit on, like to get it. Like, this number of HDMI ports. I got a new laptop 2 weeks ago, I think, and it's. So I had a previous laptop from Dell, and it was great, and it kept working for like years and years and years. But it had started to go wrong in a number of significant ways. Like, it was a gaming laptop, and it was getting so hot I couldn't play games on it because all the fans were all clogged. But like, quite difficult to replace.
Yeah,
and I think the nail in the coffin was that, like, keys on the keyboard had started to fail. Like, I couldn't press down or space or K. And I'm like, okay, well, my name's Kieran, so that one's like, for most people that wouldn't be too much of a deal breaker, but I can't sign into anything. So I was like, I went on the website and I bought a new laptop, and it's just a newer model of the same laptop. And everything about it is better. Like, it's got a much more powerful graphics card. It's got more RAM, bigger hard drive. Like, the screen is like a whole different display technology, and it's like supernaturally good. Like, the previous one had that thing where you've got those flat panel screens and it's got a slight viewing angle. So, like, you can see it from most things, but if you're too low or too high or too oblique an angle, the screen goes to weird colors. This one doesn't. Like, you can you can peer at it from like 1 millimeter around the edge, and you can still read and see everything on it. Nice. Like, it's really good, and it's got HDR, whatever that is.
Yeah, so is this, whatever that is. One day I'll know.
But they took out the subwoofer, and I'm like, it does not sound as good as my previous laptop in any way. Like you should never, when you're buying a new thing, you should always feel good about it. You should never feel like, well, I've had to settle for this.
Right, yeah.
And this was the only one I could get because there's this weird dichotomy, like, in laptops where, if you're a gamer, you're getting your gaming laptop, and if you've got a gaming laptop, the keyboard will be absolute fucking horseshit. Like one of the Dell gaming laptops I looked at didn't have arrow keys, and I was like,
that really annoys me. Or if the arrow keys are in just a really weird configuration.
They were like bound to like O, K, L, and P. I think I'm like, what? I believe some games do use the arrow keys. Like, it's not all WASD. So this was the only one I could get which had like a good keyboard, like, with like page up and page down and things, shit that people who type stuff on computers would use. But I just didn't have the subwoofer in the end, so like I've had to get used to the bass sounding a bit flat. I mean, it's not bad, but it's not as good as the one I had previously, and I'm kind of like, well, that's a bit tedious, but fine.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I mean, and everyone is a bit different, I suppose, which is part of the problem. So, what's a deal breaker for some people wouldn't be for me. Like, that wouldn't be a deal breaker for me because I do a lot of headphone listening on computers. So, and if I really want to be watching something with like decent sound quality, I'll use speakers for that because I'm being of a musical background. I'm slightly picky about how listening to like music and stuff sounds.
Well, thank you for listening. This has been the podcast where two old men moan about how technology isn't quite perfect.
We need to stop the podcast now, or we'll start talking about fucking headphone sockets in mobile
do you know?
phones.
Do you know what? Like, I was thinking about mentioning that. Like, the thing that pissed me off so much was like they were lauded like they were heroes for removing this thing, and I'm like,
Yeah,
what the fuck? What the actual fuck?
I am still holding out. I still have a phone, a relatively new phone that has a headphone socket, and my options are becoming very limited there.
Do you know what? I didn't want a phone without a headphone socket, and I'm going to go ahead and say I never listen to anything on my phone with headphones. Like,
I I do a lot, but I know what you mean though. It's like the principle, isn't it? Why remove this?
Yeah, to give them their dues, I do understand why they removed the subwoofer from the laptop. Because I had to open it up to put the SSD in, like my data drive with all my stuff on it. And when I popped it open, a third of the insides are like computer, like the motherboard and shit, and the hard drives. A third of the inside is battery, and a third is graphics card.
Yeah, graphics cards are just they look like spaceships now.
The graphics card is an entire third of the inside of this laptop. Like on my previous one, it's a little module that clips in. On this one, it's like a thing, like an unknowable black box.
Ding.
Fuck you. Oh god.
On that note,
should we start the podcast?
I was going to ask you how you are, because otherwise you get all grumpy with me if I don't do that.
I'd forgotten I'd worked myself up into a rage about technology. I am doing okay. I'm slightly annoyed because I was going to go outside and repaint the barbecue today, but it's been raining all day, and it seems like a bad idea to paint it in the rain.
Yeah, lately we've been having just these time-limited apocalypse storms happening.
Yeah, no, they are absolutely insane. Like, it's like hail but rain. I actually had that. I was coming home I was traveling home like in a car the other week, and like streets were completely flooded. Like quite near my house, like we saw little bits where there were just pedestrians trapped on tiny little dry islands.
Yeah, it's really. I thought it would maybe be something that would just last a couple of days, but it feels like it's been going on a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's close to a month. And it's just awful because it's like incredibly heavy rain interspersed with like an hour of quite hot sunshine.
Yeah.
So it's perpetually humid. I hope that the historians listening to this in the 2280s to document the start of the climate apocalypse.
Yeah.
Like at least, like cite us in your references or something, okay?
Yeah. And if people are going to document this era, as they will in history books, if I've had to live through this nightmare last 2 years, at least call it something cool, like, say, The Lost Years or something. That would be nice.
The Red Tide.
Well, that's even more sinister.
Yeah, I think that's already a thing, though. I'm pretty sure it's a thing because I just read it off the title of one of my DVDs. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're having a lot of weather. We've noticed that our guttering outside, our roof is blocked because every time there is one of these showers, there's like a waterfall in front of our window.
Oh god, yeah. Ours just pisses water down. It's destroying the front of the house. But what can you do aside from, dying?
So we're all having a wonderful time with both the natural world and man-made technology.
Yeah, I think what we can both agree is that we want to chug the void juice. Don't want to die, just want to cease to exist. Anyway. It's your turn to introduce the concept.
I don't remember whether that's true, but I'm going to take your word for it.
It was. I did it quite well last time. And we do need to have a discussion one of these days about whether we need to introduce the concept every episode, because it's what we should really be doing is saying, please go and listen to episode 1 and then sequentially the other episodes of this podcast. You can't join us here. It's not that sort of podcast.
Yeah, listen from the beginning. Just do that. That's the best approach. Maybe we'll start doing that in the next series.
We won't remember. We'll get to episode 8 again, and then.
But anyway, for the time being, for everyone who already knows this, because obviously you've listened to the previous ones, this is a podcast where we are watching the film Alien in 8-minute chunks, and we're discussing in each podcast each 8-minute chunk that we have watched. It's not a watch-along podcast, so we're not going to be reacting to it in real time. We have both seen the film before. I personally am not that familiar with the film. I've seen it a few times, but it's not really my genre, so I never had any real affinity with it. I enjoyed it, but that's about it. And Kieran is someone who has been enjoying this film since way before the age when he was technically allowed to be watching it. and so is intimately familiar with it and has gathered a lot of extra facts and details that he'll be sharing with us as we go through talking about these 8 minutes.
Well summarized, Peter.
Thank you.
So, usually here we have a little section which is called Let's Not Talk About the Thing, because this podcast was originally about the thing, and I am too short-sighted and lazy to change the name of sections of the podcast.
Mm.
This is a bit where I talk about something that's sort of related to the thing. Fuck.
I don't know whether that's a thing or no. Okay, that's all right.
That's not fair. That was literally the one. That's like the one of the 3 cases.
It's fine. I understand. I understood what you were doing there after I did the ding. I thought you were saying "thing" as a stand-in for a word you couldn't think of.
Do you know what? I'm imposing 100 penalty points on you for that.
It's fine because the points are meaningless.
Nevertheless, they're there. 100 penalty points. 1 million years dungeon. I'm going to talk about something that's tangentially related to the movie Alien, but may not be directly connected to it, although in this case it sort of is, because I'm going to talk about Veronica Cartwright.
All right, explain Veronica Cartwright.
Veronica Cartwright was born on the 20th of April 1949 and is a British-born American actress who has worked mainly in film and television in a career spanning 6 decades. As a child actress, she appeared in Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, but she's best known for her roles in 1970s science fiction films Invasion of the Body Snatchers and Alien, winning a Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress for her work in Alien. As a child, appearing in The Birds, she appeared opposite Doodles Weaver, who was Sigourney Weaver's uncle.
Uncle Doodles.
Uncle Doodles. Let's move on. In the 90s, she received 3 Emmy nominations as Outstanding Guest Actress in a Drama Series for her roles in television series ER and The X-Files. I've never seen ER, but I've seen The X-Files. I don't remember her in it. Maybe it's a later series.
Maybe so.
She originally thought she'd been cast as Alien's heroine Ellen Ripley, but director Ridley Scott switched her role with Sigourney Weaver just prior to shooting the film, and she found out on the first day when she turned up for costume.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's a weird one for an actor, I can imagine, because you've worked yourself up for this role and you turn up and they're like, no, actually, you're this person.
Huh. Yeah, that makes... even though that happened many years ago, like over 40 years ago, That just something about that just makes me feel really uncomfortable. What an awkward conversation that must have been.
She wasn't that keen on it, to be honest. But Ridley Scott had a chat with her. And, she wasn't that keen on the character of Lambert. But Ridley Scott explained that Lambert is effectively the audience in Alien. So Lambert is reacting and emoting in the way that the audience watching the film should be. So she's the character that we're supposed to be sympathizing with or empathizing with as the film goes on. And that sort of sold the character to her, and she did a very good job. I mean, Lambert is I think she gets a bit of stick for being sort of, emotional, like, sort of crying and not coming up with great plans and stuff. But to be honest, that's what 99% of us would do in this situation.
It's probably the most honest response.
It's the most honest portrayal of someone in my, like, because you like to think of yourself secretly deep down, like if you're in an action film or something, that you'll be like, oh, you'll step up and be the hero, and you'll be like, all right, I'll cross the fire gulch to save them or whatever. But where in actual fact, what you'll do is lie down, curl into the fetal position, and cry until you die. So this point of podcast is whence Introduce Bell game.
Yes, correct. So if you are wondering why we've been ringing these bells, then first of all, please go back and listen to the first episode of the podcast.
Come on, we explain it all. We're calling a moratorium on this. We'll do it for the rest of this season, but next season we'll explain the rules in the first episode.
Yes.
And that's it.
So as a holdover from when we were doing this podcast about The Thing, which you can still listen to, available on all good podcast platforms, we had a little game that we like to play where if someone said the word thing and they were not referring to this game that I'm explaining or the film or the monster in the film, then you got to ring the bell and the other person gets to feel silly for a moment, and then at the end of the series we count up the number of bells that have been rung, and we don't do that because nobody's counting, and neither of us are willing to go back and look at that. It's all meaningless.
Yeah, it's as Akewood famously once said, it's just a trivial distraction on the road to the grave. Right. Well, okay. With all of that out of the way, it's time for us to start watching that Alien movie. Woo, yeah. Right,
okay. Usually at this point you have some questions for me, or we revisit my previous thoughts, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm glad you thought you needed to remind me because we forgot to do it last time.
Yes, I did. That's why I said it out loud, and I didn't just let you lead into it.
No, I've got them written here. There's like a series of arrows pointing to it to remind me to ask you this time. So we a question that's becoming increasingly redundant: who is infected? And I've got here Kane in capital letters, and it's underlined.
Yeah, definitely for a few more seconds.
Yeah, for perhaps 10 to 15 more seconds, Kane is infected, but then that situation is going to resolve itself.
Yeah, while we were off the podcast last time, I made a very accurate prediction of how much longer he would be writhing around before the situation resolved. I guessed it would be about 20 seconds, and it will be, as we'll see.
20 seconds. Poor old Thomas Kane has 20 seconds of life left. Well, he's Thomas or Gilbert, depending which source you believe, but let's not get into that. They're only referred to by their last names in the script, so what happens next? You said a cute alien is going to burst out of Kane's upper belly area. You went off into a weird tangent about how it's not really his chest, and scuttle off towards the camera, knocking things over. They're going to look horrified, then going to split up in order to search for it. How do you feel about that?
I'm very pleased about it. I think I missed one thing that happens, but
You
that's
did,
pretty
yeah.
much what happens.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to give you some points for this, but I'm still stinging from those 100 penalty points I had to award to you earlier, so no points for this.
I disagree.
And you said, who dies next? Kane, brackets 20 seconds.
Yes.
And then after that, Brett.
I am still thinking that is the case.
All right. Well, we've got your opinions down, so let's move into watching the Alien show. That's not what it's called. Sorry, I just realized that I'd sort of drifted into like a 50s smooth radio host voice, and it completely derailed my train of thought. This is the transition we're using. Fuck all of you. And we're back. We're watching. Oh God, that was 50s radio hosting. Yeah, we're back, listeners, and we're back, and we're watching minutes 56 to 1 hour and 4 of Alien. And as always, not a watch along podcast. Stop doing that. I know you're doing it. Stop it. I will punish you with a device. How this bit works. I have a big list of bullet points about Alien for the 8 minutes we watch. I'm going to read them out, and then if we want to talk about them, we will. If we don't want to talk about them, we won't. And I'm so angry now. Stop watching along with us.
So before you get into your points, one just very simple observation I want to make about your points is that almost half of them happen in the next 30 seconds.
Yeah, it's just one of those things about how this works sometimes, is that there's going to be a massive dense cluster of stuff happening because there's a lot of action in the next minute or so.
Yeah.
And then we kind of drift for 6 minutes, and then it picks up again for the last two.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting and good pacing thing, because it's been ramping up to this moment for the entirety of the film. So you've got almost a solid hour of stuff happening, that's just building this mystery. Yeah. And then it hits, and you need some time to decompress. You can't just carry on at that pace.
I do feel that is something that has consistently kind of changed about the pacing from this point forward, though, which I'll get to when there's a relevant moment to discuss it.
Yeah. All right. Well, to the first point then. Kane arches his back and screams as the front of his shirt splatters with blood. So I got a lot of points to talk about this one, so strap yourself in, I guess. Okay. Almost all of the stuff I'm going to talk about is here at this first bit. The famous Chestburster sequence.
Yes.
First of all, rumor control. Here are the facts. That's a quote from Alien 3. There's a common fact going about that the actors didn't know what was going to happen, but this simply isn't true. They're actors, and they'd read the script.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that they didn't know how bloody and violent the scene was going to be, but they knew basically what was happening.
Yes.
So Ridley Scott had the actors all prepared in their dressing rooms and just sitting there for 6 to 8 hours while John Hurt was going through his makeup for the scene.
Yes.
And he was like, the absolute worst is to have the actors hanging around on set, because he said you can just see the energy dropping out of them as they're waiting around doing nothing. He said it's better for them to just be in their dressing rooms doing whatever, rather than just hanging around the set with nothing, for no reason.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch the process of makeup happening now, because you always hear about people being like, "Oh, they were 8 hours in makeup or something," and yes, sure, their makeup looks quite complex and stuff, but I can't think of anything that takes 8 hours. It must be way more complicated than I can even imagine to set all of that stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, for special effects as well. I mean, because you've
Yeah.
got to include like the time for lighting the scene and getting the cameras in all the right positions and all that kind of stuff. So how it sort of works here is John Hurt is lying on his back with his head, shoulders, and arms through a hole underneath the table, connected to a mechanical torso that's packed with compressed air and the alien mechanism to sort of fire it out of his thing. And it's packed in surrounding it is blood and animal guts, which they kept having to replace because they'd go off very quickly under the studio lights. So it just stank of rotten offal. Dan O'Bannon took inspiration for the Chestburster from his constant debilitating stomach pain.
Wow.
Which was eventually diagnosed a year after the film came out as Crohn's disease, and was unfortunately what he passed away from complications related to in 2009.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so he's used his real world experience as an inspiration for this horrible scene. Chestburster model was designed by Roger Dickon, and the original one was shaped like a little turkey. It's quite cute, really. It's like a little chicken. It's got little legs, like drumstick legs, and like little wing legs at the front. It's even got a little wattle, a little blood red wattle, and where the neck ends, there's just like teeth. And it was supposed to like burst out and wriggle around, but like nobody thought it was that scary. So it got redesigned into this giga phallus thing that bursts out now. Originally, he wanted it to just use its claws to tear a hole in his skin and climb out that way, because he thought it was going to be much more horrifying. But they just couldn't figure out a way of doing that in time.
Yeah.
A lot of people think that they just did this in one take, but it actually took two, because in the first take, the alien wasn't strong enough to get through the t-shirt. So they had to reset and go again and sort of score the t-shirt a bit so they could punch through. But that shot actually ended up making it into the movie. This is the one we see right at the start here, where there's just a sudden splatter of red against the inside of his shirt, and everyone recoils in absolute horror.
Yeah. It's a good shot, that.
Yeah, they end up using it to good effect. I mean, just cutting in everyone being absolutely horrified.
So, yeah, that brings us quite neatly to the next point, I suppose.
Everyone jumps back in fear. There's a beat of silent horror. Yeah,
so I do like this moment. It's like, this is the moment that it deserves a bit of a pause for the audience's sake as well, because there's a very kind of clear realization that whatever is happening here, that was definitely the moment of no return.
Yeah. The look that goes around between everyone's faces is probably along the lines of what the fuck.
Yeah.
Even Kane is silent here, which good on him to take one for the team there. Just quieten down for this bit. Kane rides and screams again. Dallas and Parker hold him down.
Yeah, and when he does start up again, he's probably because I talked about how, and I don't mean this in a bad way. I mean this in a very good way. How undignified the screaming is, and it intensifies even more at this point.
Yeah,
and like I said in the last one, they would they would almost be funny if the situation itself wasn't so horrifying.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you'd said last time as I was watching it, and they are incredibly undignified. He's not screaming. He's like, up until this point, I wouldn't have been able to tell you what gibbering was, but he is gibbering. These are guttural, horrifying noises of pain that I genuinely wouldn't want to hear a human making in an actual non-movie context. Suddenly, his chest rips open and something punches through his shirt, soaked in blood, and everyone recoils in horror. We get a little shot here of Lambert taking like a load of blood to the face. this was accidental.
Yeah, I was going to say they can't really aim that shit, probably.
Yeah, but she basically got blasted in the face with like a liter of blood, and she sort of it cuts away quite quickly because she sort of like starts shaking a bit, and at that point she fell backwards over the set.
I think you've told me about this. Yeah,
you could watch the footage in Memory, the documentary they made about Alien a couple of years ago, and it's quite funny, really. It's very very. I could see why they didn't leave it in because it's actually quite funny, even though it is horrifying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had no idea how much blood was going to be coming out of that thing, but it turned out to be a lot. We cut to a close-up of the serpentine creature rising slowly out of Kane's bleeding entrails. So he's still doing a good job here. He's sort of like twitching and thrashing around as it's like rising out, and there's like blood coming out. It's a really good series of effects. It does look a little bit like it's being pushed up from below on a stick, though.
Yeah, just this kind of next sequence that there is something that it is a little bit funny. I think it's a little bit funny, just the way that it kind of does that little scream and then kind of scuttles off very quickly. There's something that there's some weird kind of comic timing going on with it, and I wonder how much of that is deliberate in that moment, because obviously this is not the final form of the monster. This is not supposed to be the scariest form of the monster, and given what we just experienced, it feels as if the audience have maybe just earned a moment where they get to just, even if it's nervously, kind of laugh at something.
Do you know what? I think this is something which the hindsight is putting a different perspective on, because I disagree, because the original screenings of Alien, like this is the point where you've got to move your like movie going sense back about 40 years, right? No one has ever seen anything like this. And it's such a good effect. Like it's done so well. And
it is definitely a good effect. The thing that makes it, that moves it into seeming funny to me, is there's something about the framing and the timing of it that makes it feel slightly comic to me.
There's a story from the theaters that were showing it at the time, where people were running out of the cinema at this point to be sick. And in one of the theaters, they got a report back from the person who running it that the woman's toilet at that point in the movie was completely filled with people being sick.
Wow.
And they'd wadded up, like, because it's quite common to have speakers in the toilets that are playing the sound from the movie, so that you don't miss something if you have to go to the toilet. And they'd wadded up like water and tissue paper and clogged the speakers so they didn't have to continue to hear it. Yeah,
because I think this, as far as kind of gory stuff goes, for what it is, this film is fairly restrained. It's not like even like The Thing in that way.
Yeah,
it's a lot of the blood that we see, it's under a shirt here, or it's on the alien. We don't really see a kind of much of a kind of gaping wound, really.
I mean, this is by far and away the goriest bit of the movie.
Yeah, this is the goriest bit. Probably slightly more disgusting to me to look at is the bit earlier where they're poking around in the dead facehuggers bits.
In all of that shellfish. I'll take it you wouldn't eat an oyster.
It's not my favorite thing, honestly.
The creature looks slowly back and forth at the horror-struck crew. Parker grabs a knife. Ash screams at him not to touch it.
And Ash here, I feel like there's something different with how Ash is behaving at this point. It feels like there's something a bit more genuine about his looks at this point, where he's like, oh shit, I didn't realize it was going to be like this kind of look.
And he's certainly the most animated we've seen him at any point throughout the film.
Yeah.
Like, he didn't seem bothered by Kane turning up with an alien like crab on his face, but now this has happened. He's like, "Don't touch it! Don't touch it!"
Mm.
But again, we got the two things going on here. So, a naive read of the scene is that he doesn't want Parker to attack the alien because the alien can probably bleed like the facehugger did.
Right.
But also he's protecting the alien.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's definitely that's definitely true. That was my read of it anyway. Just from everything we've seen so far, I guess.
The creature growls and runs across the table, thrashing things out of its way. So this scene is kind of funny to modern audiences. I will give you that.
And this is mainly what I'm talking about. This moment, like the pause before it, and then the kind of weird noise that it makes, and then followed by this something about the timing of when this happens as well. That's the bit about this that seems funny. Everything before that, like
horrifying AF.
Absolutely horrifying. I don't want people to misunderstand me when I say when I say there's something funny about this scene.
I just see you in the cinema now, just chortling away
as he's writhing around in pain. Oh, I didn't know this was a comedy.
I feed on his agonies. Yeah, so I will give you that, and like there's definitely a hint of it's a rod puppet under a table because
right.
It's a rod puppet under a table, but you know, like they were increasingly pressed for time and budget, so
none of those turkey legs to be thumping here. It's just it looks like it's on a roller skate or something.
The tail, its limbs don't really do much as it's going, which is what makes it look a little bit unreal. But it's the same quality as the head escaping in The Thing, isn't it? Like where it's based in The Thing, it's a remote control car with camshafts that work the legs, so it wiggles away like completely preposterously. It's the same. You know, they did the best with what they had at the time,
and I think the effects hold up really well in this film. Honestly,
they do.
This is the only moment where the effects, and I'm only talking ever so slightly, take me out of it. And it's very slightly, and momentary. Really, it's not really like a black mark on the film or anything like that. It's just this is the part where the effects don't work quite as well for me as the rest of the film.
And there is one more scene a little bit later with an effect which doesn't quite work anymore. But
okay,
you'll know it when we get to it.
I don't think I remember it offhand, but yeah, I'll look out for it.
What do you think is the monster's noise? What's doing that? You're the sound guy.
Well, I don't really know, and the reason that I don't really know is because when it made the noise, when we were watching it before, you imitated the noise at the same time. So I didn't really hear it very clearly.
You can't blame this on me.
And then I forgot to kind of listen out for it the second time we watched it. All right. We usually watch it twice.
All right. In the interest of fairness, I'm going to play it for you now, okay?
Please, I'd like to hear it.
All right.
I forgot that. I would have mentioned it before if I'd remembered. I mean, if this had been made more recently, I would have said that it was the sound of maybe some sort of insect or something that had been slowed down by quite a way digitally. Because it almost sounds like it has the artifacts that you get when you digitally slow something down. But as it is, I really don't know. What is that sound?
The screech was voiced by a famous animal impersonator called Percy Edwards.
Okay.
He's I guess he's not as famous now, but he was quite famous at the time, and Ridley Scott personally requested him to do the sound effect, and that was his first take.
Wow.
They were just like, okay, yeah, that's great. That's what it sounds like. I don't know if there's any post-processing on it, but yeah, apparently it's just his first go at what newborn alien would sound like.
Yeah, it sounds to me like there's a little something going on, but yeah, it sounded to me like there was something of a digital effect going on, which is probably not the case for a film this old.
The crew watch the alien depart, dumbstruck. So I've got a note here. Yet again, Ash's look is unreadable here. I wonder if he's just thought that this might have gotten out of hand.
Yeah, he definitely. There's kind of a realization that this might be, this might just have gone a bit too far, or this might be a more dangerous situation than perhaps he was anticipating.
We cut to the camera panning slowly through the Nostromo. The crew are performing a rudimentary search for the creature. This scene is interesting because I had completely forgotten it exists. In my mind, we cut immediately to the next one without this little interstitial. And yeah, I think it's just because they're just doing it in silence. They're just scuttling around looking. But they aren't going very far. Like it's like they're expecting to find it, like, you know, within a couple of feet of the galley.
Yeah.
We cut to the crew gathered solemnly on the bridge. On a monitor, we see Kane's wrapped body lying on the floor. So we've like a bit of time has passed, enough time for them to embalm him.
Yeah, it's interesting that I forgot this scene happened actually, and it's interesting that they did this, I guess, even knowing that there's some creature out there that is very likely quite dangerous. Yeah, I just I don't know quite what to make of that, but I guess after a while they just had to put a pause on the search and deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it speaks of like the respect they had for their dead colleague. You know, like if one of your closest friends just burst in your living room, you'd want to do something about that, right? You wouldn't just be like, throw a tarp over him and let's get on with our lives.
Yeah, but if he burst because of like spiders or something, I would definitely deal with the spiders first.
But to me, the second point I was going to make is that it sort of puts a pointer on how dangerous they think the alien is. Because, all right, it's done something absolutely horrific.
Yeah.
But it's very small, and they probably like it's probably about the same size as the ship's cat at this point. So you know, it's just a little scuttly thing. Like it'll be horrifying if it catches up with one of them while they're asleep or something. But they can probably just throw a tarp over it and chuck it in the airlock.
I think it's smaller than the cat. I've kind of got a point about that later. But yeah, it's a little thing.
After a moment, Dallas presses a button to open the airlock door, and Kane's body is fired into space.
I think it's interesting that before this he says, does anyone want to say anything? Nobody does say anything, but also that doesn't feel like it's out of disrespect. It's more like that feels like the right choice for the moment, because
no one has anything to say now.
What exactly would you say that could possibly feel appropriate in that moment? Like,
sorry, Kane, you were probably the nicest member of the crew and you blew up inside the galley.
Some say he exploded too early.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Dallas does say, does anyone want to say anything? And nobody does, because what could you say? Kane's shrouded corpse twirls over and over as it shoots past the Narcissus and away. So this is again the 40-foot long model of the underside of the Nostromo that we spoke about previously.
Yeah.
And his coffin was carved out of wood and fired from a fisherman's bait catapult. And then the footage was just slowed down. So all that twirling is just what happens if you fire a tiny we cut to a slow panning shot of the outside of the Nostromo traveling through space. Some time has passed. So those three little scenes actually compress quite a lot of time down here. So we've got, the search, the dealing with Kane's funeral, and now everybody is back. So it's sort of like the crew deals with the initial horror of the birth without any of it making it to the screen.
Right.
Because you've got to imagine that there were like conversations and things that went on that we weren't a party to.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense as well. Just from the perspective of, you don't want everyone to still be in shock at this point because it's just a bit too much.
Yeah, so we've done three quick little cuts, and we've moved the crew from absolute uncomprehending shock to a point where they can start dealing with the problem, and the problem is the little alien dude.
Yeah, so I think that there is a kind of change in pacing here. So despite the fact that the film has now slowed down from what just happened, they are kind of trucking along with the story now. They've the thing happened, time skip, very quick funeral, another time skip, and into catching the creature. They're not lingering very much on any of these moments.
I dinged you. I don't know if you heard me.
I didn't hear you.
All right, hang on. Ding.
But I know what I did.
Another 100 penalty points. Back inside, the crew are getting ready to find the creature. Brett has made cattle prods, and Ash has made a motion tracker.
Ripley asks how it works, like what does it key on, and he says micro changes in air density, and he seems annoyed that he has to explain himself, and it feels very much like he's trying to say, "Oh, don't worry about it, you wouldn't understand. I shouldn't even need to be saying this."
Yeah, his air during this is like, well, I'll dumb this down to your level.
Yeah.
The motion tracker seems quite polished, really. Like it's got like an injection molded case and stuff. So I don't know if he's just, like whipped that off in the ship's 3D printer or whatever.
Yeah.
The cattle prod is a modified electric welding iron, and there's a hidden steel plate on the ceiling, which is what causes it to spark.
Yeah.
The plan is to catch the alien in a net and flush it into space. My note here says, I bet Dallas wishes he's got the cameras on B and C deck fixed.
I also, just that net, I don't think that net looks like it would hold the creature that we saw.
Yeah, I think if you tossed it in that net, it would be pissed off.
And then wriggle out of the extremely wide netting.
But they do have the shock prods as well, so I guess it's just to slow it down, because it's proven it can scuttle at quite a pace.
Yeah.
Yeah, they probably just... I mean, they're like a cargo hauling ship. They probably don't have a big supply of nets. I don't know.
That's the net they had.
That was all Parker could weave in the in the hour they had. Later, elsewhere, Ripley, Brett, and Parker hunt for the alien.
And it's not entirely unlike looking for the facehugger earlier, although it is a bit of a noisier scene. There's ship sounds and things going on here that somehow make it less tense. And I imagine that's just a kind of a decision that they just don't want to be kind of rehashing the same sort of tension from the previous scene.
Plus,
that wasn't that long ago.
Plus, again, I think this ties into what I said earlier about where on the danger scale they're putting this alien. I mean, because like they're looking for it in a group of three, but they're not like, oh my god, it's going to kill us when we find it. They're like, okay, there's a weird little doodad on the ship, and we need to put it in a cardboard box and throw it away.
Yeah, they're
the vibe
about it.
Yeah, the vibe they got is like if you were in your house and you found a particularly large possum in it or something, you'd want to do something about it, and you don't want it to bite or scratch you, but you don't think it's gonna pull out a revolver and kill you.
Yeah. You don't think that the next time you meet it, it's gonna be huge.
Spoilers. Ripley picks up a signal on the tracker. They enter a room full of junk and carefully approach a series of lockers.
Now, I did remember that it's going to be the cat at this point, so it wasn't that much of a kind of jump scare for me. I was expecting the cat to jump out.
Yeah, I'm not even sure this really counts as a jump scare because there's a lot of lead up to it.
Yeah, sure.
Parker opens the door, and Jonesy the cat hisses from inside. The crew freak out, and Brett lets it get away. Jonesy is played by 4 different cats. 4 different identical cats. I'm not sure if we mentioned this at the time, but during the first scenes where she had to act with Jonesy, Sigourney Weaver started having a bad allergic reaction.
Oh, wow. And
she was horrified because it's a lot easier to replace an actress than it is to find 4 identical cats. So she was like, well, she went to Ridley Scott and she was like, oh, am I out? Because I'm allergic to the cat. And they tested it, and she wasn't allergic to the cat fur. She was allergic to the glycerin that they were spraying on her to make her look sweaty.
Oh,
so they switched to using water for her, and she got to keep the role.
Because I was going to say, otherwise it's going to be a real bummer that she gets shut in that pod at the end of the film for years with that cat.
I was going to say, it's just another of those things that you really don't think about when, one of the things that can happen while making a film is like, oh, it turns out a movie where a cat is quite an important plot point, and the main actress is allergic to them. Parker sends Brett to go and catch Jonesy again so they don't pick him up while looking for the alien. That's a really good point. The first time I saw it, I was like, oh, it's let it go. That's not a problem. And they're like, no. Otherwise, we'll just be perpetually chasing this fucking cat around the ship.
Yeah.
And here they send Brett off on his own to look for the cat.
Yeah.
And to me, again, this points to where on the threat level they're placing this thing, because they're thinking if he sees it, he's going to be like, "Whoa, there's a thing," and they'll come running,
But the audience, with their genre awareness, I feel at this point are now like, "Oh dear, Brett's in trouble."
poor Brett. And we end this scene with Brett meowing and Jonesy meowing back.
And I do feel like this is a much better 8-minute stopping point this time. So they what's happened here is they have the event happens at the beginning. They have a plan to get the alien. The first attempt is a false alarm, and now Brett is off to find Jonesy, and that kind of closes off that kind of mini chapter of finding the alien.
And they all realize they're in much greater danger than they think. So, who's infected, Peter? Does this question mean anything anymore?
Probably not. We'll probably have to revisit these questions next time we start up this podcast as well.
No. We can add to them, but never remove. That's the rule. That's what I've decided.
Nobody is infected unless you include the ship itself.
What happens next, Peter?
I think that Brett is going to go deeper into that. Oh, I don't know what you call this area that he's gone into, but he's going to go deeper into that big room, and he is going to get attacked by an alien. I think this is the end for Jonesy. For Jonesy, not for Jonesy, for Brett.
Oh dear. So that answers my next question as well. Who dies next? And you're saying it's Brett.
I think it's Brett. I don't remember what happens immediately after this. This is probably the fuzziest area overall of the film for me. I don't really remember very much about the order of events now until we get right towards the end of the film, so I'm not going to be that confident in what happens next from now on. I don't think.
And you think he's going to die in the next episode?
I think so, yeah. I mean, there's always a chance that at this point they then cut away to another scene and some other stuff happens, and then later we rejoin the adventures of Brett. But I think this is probably going to happen quite quickly. I think it's going to be in the next episode.
Well, that brings us pretty much to the end of this episode, so all I have to do is ask you, what are you thinking of the film so far?
Yeah,
how have these 8 minutes enhanced your feelings?
So, I'm thinking about what I just said, and also my general attitude towards this series of films, or the ones that I have seen, which is essentially the first two and bits of other films. And how, generally speaking, I have enjoyed the second film. I've enjoyed Aliens a bit more, and I think that's just because I like the characters in that film. It's a bit closer to kind of action territory that I quite enjoy. And it's I do really enjoy that film, and I just there are characters in that film like the business guy whose name I don't remember, who I love to hate, and
Burke.
Yeah,
so even got a Yeah, so people ask me, like, what's your favorite film, Alien or Aliens? And I'm like, the different genres. Alien is the best horror film. Aliens is the best action movie. So.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough, and I think that's probably why I don't remember very much about the events of the next film, because to me, the bit that really makes this film for me, the bit that is the most interesting part, the bit that I love most about this film when I watch it, and I really think works for me on at a really high level, is what we've just watched. Basically, everything that we've watched kind of up until this point, the really slow atmosphere building that you don't really get to have in the very much in the second film, the sense of mystery about what the threat is and how they handle that, and just the whole pacing of it. And that's going to change from this point. I don't think it becomes a bad film or anything like this from this point, but I think at this point we have probably seen my favorite parts of this film.
Yeah, the suspense is fully discharged, and now it's just the time to knock off the ensemble cast one by one.
Right.
It's interesting you say that there's not as much suspense in Aliens, because there is and there isn't. Like, they definitely needed to take out the scenes set on the colony at the start, which they put back in the special edition,
right?
Because that removes any suspense whatsoever. It's literally them going, well, we're going to go check out this thing we've been told to check out. I hope it's not a terrifying alien or something. And
yeah,
and then it cuts to another scene where they're like, oh, we've lost contact with the colony. You're like, well, okay, I know what happened there then.
Okay, I guess there's suspense, but there's not. But it's suspense with more of an action movie style pacing, right?
Yeah, definitely. It's not a solid hour of basically nothing scary happening in a horror film.
Right. Yeah. And that's the difference for me. And and as I've said many times in the previous podcast, I really have grown to appreciate how long they spend in that first hour, and I just, that going through this, the admiration for that has grown, and it's made me realize that I think that is, in a big way, that is this film to me. That is the thing that distinguishes this film. And I don't think, like I said, I don't think the rest of it is bad. There's loads of great stuff that is still going to happen, some of which I remember. But if I had to rate each part of the film, I think everything that we've just seen would be very highly rated, and everything we're about to see would be just a little bit below it for me.
So you're telling me you're going to coast for the next 7 episodes? That's it. You're
It's
thoroughly tuned out now.
It's all downhill from here, folks. No, it's very slight. It's just that the sorts of things that are going to be happening in the next part of the film, I get more enjoyment out of how the next film handles that kind of action, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I guess all that leaves us to say is if you have any questions, comments, if you're an unusual shape or size, if you've ever seen a turkey burst out of a man, just email us and we'll talk to you about that. The email address is podcast@8minutemovies.co.uk. You can use the number or the letters because I had to buy both domains. And then we go. Peter, or 8, as indeed I called you in the introduction. Where do you be found on the interweb?
I am available on Twitter and similar sorts of platforms as Kestrel Pie. That's Kestrel like the bird, and Pi like the irrational number. And what about you?
And I am Kieran J. Walsh. That is who I am. It is my burden and my curse. It's funny.
Those are both bad things.
They're both bad things. Okay. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.